I entered the tournament because I was tired of coming in second. That's the honest answer. Not because I loved fishing. Not because I believed I had some natural talent. And definitely not because I expected to win. I entered because I'd spent most of my adult life watching other people succeed at things they weren't necessarily better at. They were just luckier, or earlier, or willing to push a little harder than I was. By the time I turned 36, that feeling had started getting under my skin. You notice it more when you're stuck. Same apartment, same truck, same routines. Friends buying houses while you're figuring out whether groceries can wait until payday. Nothing dramatic, just years of almost enough money, almost enough success, almost enough confidence. The fishing tournament wasn't supposed to matter. It was a regional event held every summer across a chain of connected lakes about 3 hours north of where I lived. 180 competitors, cash prizes, sponsors, food vendors, families, the kind of thing local news stations covered when there wasn't anything else happening. I had entered twice before, finished near the middle both times. Nothing memorable. This year I told myself it would just be a week away from normal life. A vacation with a possibility of earning money. That's all. The first day felt exactly like every other tournament. Boats launching before sunrise. Coffee in paper cups. People pretending not to care about rankings. The air smelled like fuel, lake water, and sunscreen. The morning fog sat low across the water. You could hear engines starting all around you before you could clearly see the boats. The competition rules were straightforward. Length, weight, species restrictions, daily limits. Everything documented. Everything public. Everything except one rule. At registration, every competitor received a packet. Most pages covered schedules and regulations. The final page contained a single paragraph. All qualifying catches exceeding tournament minimums must be presented at the evening weighing dock. Failure to present a qualifying catch will result in disqualification. Simple enough, except people treated it strangely, not suspiciously, uncomfortably. The first time I asked another competitor about it, he shrugged, then changed subjects. The second guy laughed, not because it was funny, because he clearly didn't want to discuss it. Eventually I stopped asking. Some traditions are just traditions. The first 3 days were ordinary. I climbed steadily in rankings. Not enough to attract attention, just enough to stay competitive. The lakes were beautiful that time of year. Warm afternoons, cool mornings. The water almost black in certain areas where clouds reflected across the surface. Most evenings ended the same way. Competitors gathered at the weighing dock. Families watched. Officials recorded results. Applause. Announcements. Then everyone went back to hotels and campgrounds. I noticed something during those ceremonies. Nobody ever took their fish home. Not even the largest catches. Not even trophy fish. Everything remained behind the dock. Large storage containers collected them. By morning, the containers were gone. Again, not alarming. Just unusual. On the fourth day, I caught something strange. Not impossible. Just strange. I was fishing near the northern end of Lake Mercer. Deep water. Few boats nearby. The line went tight unexpectedly. Heavy resistance. Far heavier than anything I'd hooked all week. The fight lasted nearly 20 minutes. When I finally brought it alongside the boat, I remember staring at it. The fish looked wrong. Not deformed. Not diseased. Wrong. Its scales reflected light oddly. Almost metallic. The eyes seemed unusually large. The body proportion slightly off. I couldn't identify the species immediately, which shouldn't happen. Most experienced anglers know regional fish, at least enough to recognize them. I photographed it, measured it, released it. Tournament rules required identification before submission. Without it, the catch didn't count. That evening, I showed the photograph to several competitors. Nobody could identify it. A few became visibly uncomfortable. One older fisherman stared longer than anyone else, then asked where I'd caught it. When I told him, he nodded slowly. No explanation, no reaction, just a slow nod. The next morning, he withdrew from the tournament. No announcement, no drama, just gone. By day 5, the competition changed. The atmosphere, the rankings became intensely competitive. People stopped sharing information, stopped chatting at docks, stopped helping one another. You could feel pressure building. Money does that. especially when enough people need it. That afternoon, I caught another unusual fish. This one counted. Barely. The species was identifiable. The size exceptional, large enough to push me into the top 10. When I brought it to the weighing dock, applause broke out. Not unusual. Top catches always drew attention. What bothered me was what happened afterward. The fish wasn't placed in storage. It was carried somewhere behind the weighing platform. A fenced section competitors weren't allowed to enter. For a moment, I considered following. Then somebody called my name. Conversation resumed. The moment passed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, because I was thinking about rankings, about prize money, about how close I suddenly was. People like to imagine greed feels exciting. Usually it feels practical. You start doing math, rent, bills, repairs, debt. Winning begins sounding responsible. The sixth day was when things stopped feeling normal. The lake was crowded, far more boats than usual. Word had spread about unusually large catches. Everyone wanted them. Everyone was chasing them. By noon, 3 competitors had landed fish larger than anything recorded during previous tournaments. The leaderboard changed constantly. People became reckless. Boats crossed dangerous areas. Arguments started. One man nearly collided with another vessel while racing toward a fishing spot. Officials issued warnings. Nobody cared. By evening, I was sitting in 4th place. Close enough to taste it. Close enough to imagine standing on stage. That was when I met Eric. We'd crossed paths before. Friendly enough. He was 2 places above me. We ended up sitting near the docks after weigh-in, talking, mostly complaining about weather and rankings. The sort of conversation competitors have when pretending they aren't calculating each other's chances. At one point, he mentioned his daughter, 7 years old, loved fishing, wanted to watch him win. He laughed while showing pictures on his phone. Nothing unusual, just a father talking about his kid. Then he said something strange, not frightening, just strange. He said, "Funny thing is, the closer you get to first place, the harder it gets to care about who's behind you." I remember laughing, then realizing he wasn't joking. And for some reason, that sentence stayed with me. Because by the following day, I understood exactly what he meant. And that's when the tournament finally showed me what it was really measuring. The final day started before sunrise. I woke up around 4 in the morning inside a cheap motel room that smelled faintly of mildew and coffee. For a few minutes, I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about money, thinking about rankings, thinking about how absurd it was that a fishing tournament had become the most important thing in my life. Then I got dressed and drove to the launch area. The parking lot was already crowded. Headlights, boat trailers, people moving quietly through the dark. The atmosphere felt different, not tense, focused, like everyone had collectively decided there was no reason to pretend anymore. Nobody was there for fun. Not today. Today was about winning. The weather forecast predicted storms later that afternoon. Tournament officials warned competitors repeatedly. Be cautious. Monitor conditions. Return early if necessary. Most people nodded, then ignored them. By 6:30, boats were spreading across the lakes. I headed north, toward the deeper water where I'd seen the strange fish earlier in the week. Part of me felt ridiculous. I wasn't following evidence. I wasn't chasing a theory. I was chasing luck, or maybe temptation. Those feel similar sometimes. The water remained calm for most of the morning. I caught several decent fish. Nothing remarkable. The leaderboard updates came through the tournament app every hour. By 10 o'clock, I had slipped to 7th. By 11, 8th. The larger catches were appearing again. Competitors were finding fish that seemed impossible for those lakes. Massive fish, record-setting fish, the kind people would normally spend years hoping to land. And somehow, dozens were being caught within the same week. Around noon, I reached a narrow channel connecting 2 lakes. The area wasn't popular. Shallow water, dense reeds, few boats. I remember feeling irritated. I had spent hours without improving my position. The prize money was slipping away. The whole week felt like it was slipping away. Then I saw Eric's boat, half hidden among the reeds. Engine off, drifting. At first I thought he was fishing. Then I noticed something odd. He wasn't holding a rod. He was standing, looking into the water, perfectly still. I eased closer, close enough to wave. No response. Closer. Still nothing. Then I called his name. That got his attention. Slowly, almost reluctantly. He turned toward me, and even now, I'm not completely sure how to describe the expression on his face. Not fear, not excitement, recognition maybe, the look people get when they realize they've already made a decision. He looked down into the water again, then back at me, and said, "Don't come over here." I laughed, asked why. He didn't answer immediately, just kept staring into the lake. Finally he said, "Because if you see it, you'll stay." I remember thinking he'd lost his mind. Heat exhaustion, stress, something. Then he started his engine and left. Just left. No explanation, no conversation. Within minutes, he was gone. I sat there staring at the empty water. And that's the moment I could have avoided everything. I could have moved on. I could have gone back to fishing. I could have ignored him. Instead, I looked. The water was unusually clear. Sunlight reached farther down than it should have. I leaned over the side of the boat. At first, I saw nothing. Then movement. Far below. A shape. Large. Very large. Bigger than any fish I'd ever seen. It moved slowly. Not swimming exactly. Circling. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds. 20. Long enough to realize there wasn't just one. There were dozens. Huge dark forms moving beneath the lake. Some close to the bottom. Others rising gradually upward. None behaving like normal fish. I should explain something. What disturbed me wasn't their size. It was their behavior. They weren't chasing prey. They weren't feeding. They weren't avoiding boats. They were gathering. As if waiting. For what? I couldn't tell. I sat there watching longer than I meant to. Minutes passed. The shapes continued circling. Slow. Patient. Eventually my phone buzzed. Leaderboard update. The sound startled me. I looked away. Then looked back. The shapes were gone. Just dark water. Nothing else. I spent the next hour trying to convince myself I'd imagined details. Large fish exist. Schools gather. Light distorts distance. Reasonable explanations. All reasonable. The problem was that I couldn't stop thinking about Eric's words. If you see it, you'll stay. Not them. It. Singular. Around 2 o'clock, the storm arrived. Fast. Dark clouds rolled across the lakes. Wind picked up. Officials began broadcasting warnings. Competitors started heading back. Most of them. Not all. The rankings were too close. The prize money too tempting. People stayed, including me. The rain started shortly afterward, heavy enough to blur visibility. Waves slapped against the boat. The safe decision would have been returning immediately. Instead, I kept fishing. Just a little longer. Just one more chance. That's the lie people tell themselves before bad decisions. One more chance. At approximately 3:15, my line hit harder than anything I'd ever experienced. The rod bent violently. Drag screamed. The force nearly pulled me forward. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, because adrenaline does strange things. For the next half hour, I fought whatever was attached to that line. Rain, wind, waves. None of it mattered. Only the fish. Only the possibility. Every thought narrowed toward that single goal. When the shape finally surfaced beside the boat, my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't merely large. It was impossible. The body resembled a fish. Mostly, but not completely. The proportions felt wrong in ways I still struggle to explain. Its skin reflected the storm-dark water like polished stone. The eyes seemed clouded, ancient. The mouth hung slightly open. And inside, this is the part people usually think I'm inventing. Inside its mouth were dozens of fishing hooks. Old hooks, new hooks, hundreds of feet of line trailing downward into dark water. As if generations of people had tried catching it. As if generations had failed. The fish barely resisted anymore. It floated alongside the boat, watching, or appearing to watch. And I had a choice. Not a supernatural choice. Not a magical choice. A simple one. Cut the line, or land the fish. That's when I noticed something attached to one of the trailing lines. A lure. Bright pink. Child-sized. Decorated with cartoon fish. I had seen it before. On Eric's phone. His daughter's favorite lure. The one she'd painted herself. I knew that immediately. And somehow that knowledge hit harder than the fish itself. Because suddenly I understood what the tournament was measuring. Not skill. Not patience. Not luck. willingness. The fish were bait, not for hooks, for people. Every year, competitors arrived, wanting something. Money, recognition, validation, a win. And every year, some of them chose to keep going. Farther, harder, longer, ignoring weather, ignoring judgment, ignoring each other. The tournament rewarded exactly that. Not because anyone forced them, because they volunteered. The realization came too late. I wish I could tell you I cut the line immediately, that I learned some noble lesson, that I chose morality over greed. But that's not what happened. The truth is uglier. I hesitated for several seconds, maybe longer. I looked at that fish. I looked at the storm, and part of me still wanted to win. Even then, even knowing something was wrong. That part of myself is what I remember most clearly. Not the fish, not the storm, that hesitation. Eventually the line snapped on its own. The force nearly threw me backward. The fish vanished beneath the water instantly. Gone. Just gone. I returned to shore during the worst weather I'd ever navigated. Emergency crews were already active. Several boats hadn't checked in, including Eric's. The search continued for 2 days. They found his boat. They never found him. Officially, it was a storm-related accident. Maybe it was. Maybe that's the only explanation. Maybe everything else was coincidence. The tournament was canceled permanently the following year. No public reason was given. Sponsors withdrew. Attendance collapsed. People moved on. That's what happens. Most things disappear faster than you'd expect. I've tried moving on too. For the most part, I succeeded. Years passed. Life changed. I found better work. Moved to a different state. Stopped entering competitions. Stopped fishing entirely for a while. Then last summer, I visited a lake near my new home. Just for the afternoon. Nothing serious. I rented a small boat. Bought coffee from a marina. Spent a few hours on the water. Normal day. Ordinary day. At one point, I looked over the side. The water was calm, clear, and far below, deeper than sunlight should have reached, I saw movement. A slow circle, then another, large shapes, patient shapes, not approaching, not chasing, waiting, the same way they had been waiting years earlier. The same way they may have been waiting long before any tournament existed, long before any docks, long before any prizes. I don't think they followed me. I don't think they're interested in me specifically. That would almost be comforting. No, I think they're interested in something much simpler. People. People who want things badly enough. People willing to keep reaching a little farther. People who convince themselves one more chance is worth the risk. And every time I remember the look on Eric's face in that channel, I find myself wondering whether he understood that before I did. Or whether, like me, he only figured it out after it was already too late.